Gleyber Torres accepts the qualifying offer, and the Tigers protect 5 players from the Rule 5 draft, making the 40-man roster look a lot different.
You are Locked On Tigers, your daily Detroit Tigers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Tigers. I'm, of course, your host, Scott Bentley. Today is Wednesday, November 19th, 2025. Thank you so much for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. So download the app today. Welcome in, everybody. Welcome all. Happy Wednesday here. Halfway point in the week, and we have so much to discuss. We're going to end the show by talking about the qualifying offers from around baseball that were accepted and declined. A big day in that regard. Then we will obviously talk about the 5 players the Tigers added to the 40-man roster to protect from the Rule 5 draft. But we're going to start off today's show by discussing Gleyber Torres accepting the qualifying offer, a 1-year, $22.05 million deal. He can now never be offered the qualifying offer again. It's intriguing to me. It's rather interesting. I'm not shocked, and I think that it's a testament to how weak the market would have been for him in free agency. I think this is something that a month ago I would have been a little bit surprised about, but the writing has been on the wall as this deadline date of yesterday, as you listen to this, Tuesday, has been getting closer and closer. Like there's pretty clearly was not a market that was going to justify him testing free agency and leaving a 1-year, $22 million deal on the table, right? He probably could have gotten multiple years from somebody, but the AAV would have been so much lower than what he was offered here that it just makes more sense for him to get healthy. Obviously, he had the procedure to address the sports hernia, get healthy, try to do what he did in the first half of 2025 throughout an entire season, and still, I think he's only 29 this year, like still be young enough to where he could get a 3 or 4 year deal next off season, assuming there's is an off season as well. So, ultimately, from the Tigers' perspective, my feelings on this are relatively neutral. And that's not a bad thing. I've said over the last couple of weeks, if he didn't accept and, some other team was willing to give him 3, 4, 5 years, then I would have been very okay with that. And I would not have been upset at all. But he's back, and that's a good thing. Like that is this is a guy that, again, in the first half was one of the best hitters on the team. Even with the poor second half, you still look at what his numbers were throughout the season and what he provided throughout the season. He was one of the more valuable bats, at least, on the team. So, like, I am very much was going to be okay either way. And one of the two options happened, so I'm very much okay. I think it is also, in the same breath, fair to point out some mild, maybe not even concerns is the right word, but just like questions that arise from this decision. Like I have quite a few actually questions. I think I have more questions with him accepting the QO than I would have if he declined it. Because if he declined it, then it's just like, okay, presumably that's just going to be Colt Keith's spot, and like we'll see what happens. Now, it does address some holes. The Tigers get a right-handed hitter back, which they need in the lineup, a guy that does not strike out, a guy that does draw a lot of walks. All of those are great things, and he does all of those at an incredible clip. You do, however, create somewhat of a log jam on the right side of your infield. And you could kind of just say the infield in general. So if we assume Torkelson is going to be first base and Gleyber is going to be second base, that leaves shortstop and third base open, and you have to find a spot for Colt Keith, Javi Baez, presumably, and then like maybe at some point in 2026, Kevin McGonigle. I know that there's some people that, comment whenever I bring this up and are like, hey, like pump the brakes a little bit. He isn't even proven in AAA yet. I get that. I'm not saying that he needs to make the team out of camp or anything. I think especially after this move, odds are a lot better that he starts off in AAA. But these deals, these players, barring injury, are going to be on the team the entirety of the season. And I'm not sure I'm going to dig my heels in and say McGonigle shouldn't be on the Detroit Tigers until 2027. I think that's going too far in the opposite direction of refusing to call somebody up or taking too much of a patient approach. He's a lot closer than that. So you're even talking about at some point in the middle of the year. Now, injuries happen. Maybe he just fills a spot in that regard, and it works out better than I'm overthinking it right now. But currently, at full health, there's too many players with not enough spots. So, I mean, how does the outfield look? How does the infield, rather? What we're actually talking about look? Torkelson at first, Gleyber at second, McGonigle at short, Colt Keith at third, Javi as a super utility, kind of like plays everywhere. I think that has the potential to be quite literally the worst defensive infield I've ever seen in my entire life. It's a way to get everybody playing, which I can appreciate. That's about all it accomplishes. That is legitimately just a horrid defensive infield waiting to happen. So I'm not sure that that's going to happen. Not going to hold my breath on that scenario. Torque first, Gleyber second, Javi short, Colt Keith third. Puts everybody else at their true position, and then Colt Keith is just going to play third base, and then McGonigle replaces somebody mid-season or an injury call-up or whatnot. I'm just not sure that the organization or myself, for that matter, is like really sold on Colt Keith being an everyday third baseman for 162 games. Maybe it's a platoon. Maybe, but like you gave Colt Keith a contract before he took a MLB plate appearance just to make him a platoon against right-handed pitchers at third base. You could also put Torque at first, Gleyber at second, Javi at short. Colt Keith could DH. Did you extend a DH before he played a Major League Baseball game? And then like Carpenter is just like he plays against righties and lefties and is just full-time right field, or you have a platoon in right field instead of DH, and McGonigle still, like, you see my point? Like there's a lot of moving parts here. I mean, maybe like Torkelson's the odd man out, and you put Colt Keith at first base. I find it hard to believe that Torque, after whatever he had, 790, 785 OPS and over 30 home runs, is going to be the odd man out. But like, who knows? And the reason why I paint all of these pictures is not to say like, oh, which one do you choose? They have time for that to iron out. There is no pressure to make that decision today. What I am saying is, even with all of those scenarios I just listed, none of them include a proven, like, we are confident that this is going to work, everyday major league third baseman. None of them. The only one from a defensive perspective you're confident in, and out of all of those names I listed, would be Javi. And I'm not sure we're confident that the bat is going to maintain here going forward. So then you start asking questions about tradable assets to clear up the logjam a little bit, which is great, but there's some pros and cons to that as well. We will talk about that right after this. First, though, got to talk to you all about our friends over at FanDuel. The NFL season is back, and there's no better place to get in on all of the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of a game or want to ride a hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score the next point to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game more exciting, especially when your team is making the late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up today and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Segment 2 of Locked On Tigers. Appreciate y'all for tuning in, as always, making us your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day, and we will, of course, be back tomorrow as we start to take a look ahead to the final big deadline before winter meetings, and that is on Friday, the non-tender deadline. We'll talk about some arbitration numbers on tomorrow's show. So thank you so much for tuning in and making the Locked On Network the #1 sports podcast network. Today we discuss all of the decisions that were made on Tuesday, whether those decisions were made by Gleyber Torres or the Detroit Tigers. We discuss them all. Jumping back into the Gleyber Torres conversation, we talked about maybe like this sets up a trade maybe for the offseason going forward to kind of clear up maybe some of the logjam there over in the infield and especially the right side of the infield. Gleyber has 1 year left. So, like, I saw some people throwing out, we should trade, Colt Keith now and whatnot. Like, well, I mean, you could. I guess you could trade Keith. Gleyber plays second, sign a third baseman, and then in 2027, McGonigle plays second. You could, like, hand it off that way. You could trade Torque, and Keith could just be the first baseman going forward. All of those things are possible. I also think Colt Keith is on an incredibly team-friendly deal. And I feel like I'm beating a dead horse because I've said this a lot. This isn't an advocacy for him to be like hitting cleanup and playing every day. He has to earn that, obviously. But this was one of the better and higher regarded hitting prospects that the Tigers had in years when he was coming up through the system from a pure hitting perspective. I think the Tigers would ideally like to see him, give him more opportunities to see if he could reach that ceiling that was once bestowed upon him. He is still very young, obviously, as well. This is also not even really like to harp on McGonigle even more, but like, what if he's not a third baseman or shortstop, defensively, at least at the major league level? I'm not trying to make this sound like a bad thing. I feel like this is not me complaining. This is me being very animated in the questions that I have. And it raises a lot of questions. It does. You have a lot of bodies that you'd like to give some at-bats to, and you don't necessarily have enough spots unless you're willing to take some risks. I mean, like, has a player ever accepted a qualifying offer and then been traded? Like, that feels like a weird thing, but that I don't think the Tigers would necessarily do. But I think, like, even something weird like that could be on the table. I don't think that's completely ridiculous either. It shows that there's depth, which is never a bad thing. And that is something that we have to keep in mind, contextualize here. Like, having these hard discussions about who plays where is a positive in the sense that your roster is deep enough to be having them. My biggest question I have, above anything else we've talked about today up to this point, is does this prevent the Tigers from signing another infielder? I don't think it should. And I'll go a step further. I would be upset if it did. Logjam it up over on the right side, man. Do whatever you want over there. Have a billion different second basemen for all I care. None of them are proven at third base. And I'm not confident in any of them to play third base over the course of a full season. You need to add a legitimate third baseman still that can not only just play the position of third base in the field, but also extends this lineup, is a legitimate bat that you can put in the top or the heart of this lineup. So this is great, and this is something that the Tigers lineup didn't have 24 hours ago and now has again. That's awesome. In Gleyber Torres, that is. But it also doesn't really change the holes that the team has. Like you spent it's $22 million for a good player. It doesn't change any of the team needs that I had a day or two ago. Free agent third base, Javi shortstop, Gleyber second, Torque first, Keith, who knows? McGonigle at some point in 26, who knows? Like, I don't know. It'll be interesting. Depth is not a bad thing, but not getting young developing players needed at bats is also not a good thing. So you have to walk that line very carefully. But ultimately, like, again, if you want to simplify it, Gleyber is a good bat that hopefully he will be healthy. He will perform like he did in the first half of 2026, and he provides options and versatility. I think that this gives the Tigers front office flexibility heading into a very important offseason. You now have multiple options at a handful of positions. That is a powerful position to be in as a front office, right? There's a lot of good that can come from that, and it gives you the flexibility to make some trades and sign some players that maybe you wouldn't have before. Just remember that you also have some positions that may have legitimately zero, that you may as an organization have legitimately zero options at currently in your organization. And like, who knows? Maybe Colt Keith is just a really good defensive third baseman, and that's it. And it's just super simple. And I'm overthinking this on November 18th, November 19th. But all questions that are stirring around in my oversized brain. Do not let this be an excuse to oversized head. I wasn't trying to call myself smart. My skull is literally too large, doctors have said. So go out and still get some high-end talent. Don't let this be the end. The Rule 5 protection deadline also on Tuesday. The Tigers had 5 players in Hao-Yu Lee, Thyron Lorenzo, Trey Cruz, Jake Miller, and Eduardo Valencia. All 5 of them added to the 40-man roster, so 2 more than I had predicted yesterday. My final prediction was Hao-Yu Lee, Thyron Lorenzo, and Jake Miller. So Trey Cruz and Valencia, the 2 that were not on my list. Not that anybody cares, but this is a really fun list. We talked about all of these guys a lot more in depth yesterday. So if you're looking for a full breakdown, you can go check that out on Tuesday's show. To give a real kind of like the biggest talking points for all of them really quickly, Hao-Yu Lee, I really do have a feeling is going to just replace the Andy Ibanez role by opening day. Ibanez makes it through this round of cuts, but now the non-tender deadline is Friday, and unless the Tigers are going to add literally nobody, they're still going to have to make some moves and put some people on waivers or DFA players throughout the winter at some point anyway. So we'll see what happens there. But Hao-Yu Lee, a guy that's played second and third at an okay level, but has just mashed against left-handed pitching in AAA in 2025. Thyron Lorenzo, very, very far away from being MLB ready. Hit just over 200 and struck out over 30% of the time in AA in 2025, but is ultimately still a switch-hitting, catching prospect that has a lot of power from both sides. And those don't grow on trees. That's not a profile you see very often at all. So the upside is just still there to the point where the Tigers are not willing to risk losing him and having him reach that ceiling for another organization. The other 3 are kind of the quote-unquote surprises of the bunch. We'll talk about them right after this. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Third and final segment, Locked On Tigers. Appreciate y'all for tuning in as always. So Trey Cruz is who I want to start with here, jumping back into the 5 players the Tigers protected from the Rule 5 draft and added to the 40-man. I am so happy for Trey Cruz, man. This is a third-generation professional player. If he makes the major leagues, he'll be a third-generation Major League Baseball player in his family. Obviously, the Cruz family, a very, very deeply rooted baseball family throughout the history of the league. And he is a really intriguing super utility option. Like, this is a guy that the best way I can explain it is if this guy was put on waivers from another team, this is someone you immediately look at and go, wow, that dude has Detroit Tiger waiver claim written just all over him. He walked a ton. I'm talking like pushing 20% walk rate in AAA this past season. He also didn't strike out very much, a K rate around 20% as well. That's along with plus defense at shortstop and center field, along with a history of playing second and third before in his professional career. Hindsight's always 2020. We talked about the possibility of it yesterday. The only thing that was standing in his way is his age. He's 27 and turns 28 in July of the middle of next season. I thought that might have been a reason to maybe hesitate, but ultimately, like, 6 years of service is 6 years of service, man. It doesn't matter whether you're 40 or 20. You got 6 years of team control when you get when that major league service time clock starts. So we'll see what happens with him, but it really would not shock me if we saw some Trey Cruz at the major league level this year. Jake Miller, just a profile that you can't leave unprotected. And we talked about that on yesterday's show as well. I was pretty confident in him. 25, 26-year-old left-handed pitcher, has experience as a reliever and as a starter, has incredible results over just in terms of stats, baseline stats over the last 2 seasons. Just was hurt for almost all of 2025 and is still recovering as we speak today, but hopefully he's ready to roll in 2026. And yeah, with all that stuff going for him, just wasn't a guy that I think almost certainly would have been taken in the Rule 5 draft. The one remaining player is Eduardo Valencia, and he is the one that genuinely does surprise me. We talked about him a little bit at the end of yesterday's show. Really happy for him. This is one of the best bats in the entire Tigers minor league system in 2025. Had an OPS over 1,000 in AAA. Spent the first couple of months in AA where he hit really well. Not as well as he did in AAA, but still really well. OPS in the mid 800s at that level. A guy that's 25, 26 years old and just has never hit like this ever at the professional level. We're talking about like seasons of, 650, 640, 630, 680 OPS type of production, and just absolutely something clicked and he mashed this year. Like Kerry Carpenter kind of came out of nowhere. Not maybe to that extent of like 600 OPS to 1,000 OPS, but like Kerry Carpenter wasn't on anybody's radar 3 years ago, 4 years ago, whenever that year that was either, and kind of came out of nowhere and was playing Major League Baseball by the end of that season as a September call-up. So it's probably worth a look. Valencia is probably worth a look, and he probably would have been a candidate to be taken in the Rule 5 just because of the bat. The defense is the question mark for me and for a lot of other people. I don't know if he really has a position at the present moment. He's played some first base. He's also caught. He's not a very good defensive catcher, and he's getting up there in years. I'm not sure he's ever going to be. But ultimately, he's a right-handed hitter that raked in the minor leagues, hit for power, slug over 500, a lot of home runs in a short amount of time in AAA. So we'll see what happens with him. I also just want to take some time and just say genuine congratulations to all 5 of these gentlemen. Like, making the 40-man roster, I don't think a lot of people realize how important of a milestone that is. Like, the rules for pay and like benefits and whether, I mean, you can just play Major League Baseball, like all of that stuff is so different and is so elevated once you make the 40-man roster. Even if you're a minor leaguer playing in the minors but on the 40-man, it's a lot different, and this means a lot to these guys. It really does. So congratulations to them, and hopefully they can all contribute to winning for the Major League team here at some point in 2026. The flip side of all of that good news is that with 5 minor leaguers plus Gleyber Torres, who was not on the 40-man, obviously, he was a free agent, all being added. That's 6 total players added to the 40-man roster yesterday. 6 players had to be removed from the 40-man as well. Those 6 gentlemen are Dugan Darnell, Jack Little, Tanner Rainey, Tyler Madison, Sean Gunther, and Jason Foley. The first thing you notice, aside the fact that Jason Foley's name is on here, is that they're all pitchers and they're all relievers. I think that's a testament. We touched on this earlier in the week as well, like a testament to how weak the bottom of the 40-man roster really is for in terms of the bullpen and in terms of just the pitching depth there. Like you could really kind of flip any of these guys for any of these guys, and I'm not sure that the value would change a whole lot in the eyes of the front office. But I think if we want to go player by player, Darnell and Little were almost always, I mean, we talked about that when they were claimed, right? Like they were almost always going to be guys that were just claimed and then didn't make it through the offseason on the 40-man. And they're going to, basically the attempt here is to claim them and then try to immediately put them on waivers so that they can clear waivers. And if they do, then you just get them on minor league deals and you get them as a part of your organization and you poach them from somebody else. That's the hope that the front office has with both of those guys. Tyler Madison's a little surprising to me just because of the upside, but he was hurt a lot, has been hurt a lot over the last 2 calendar years and barely pitched this season. I think only 20 or 30 innings under his belt. So it wouldn't shock me if he was brought back on a minor league deal as well. Rainey, not really a surprise. He was always going to be one of those guys that was kind of in the mix. Gunther and Foley are the 2 big names here. Both ended the year hurt, and presumably, I guess, somewhat assuming they still are to some extent. It'll be interesting to see what happens here. Both could very easily get picked up by someone else. But I think the hope here, the Tigers' belief at least, is that they are hurt. And there is, again, with all of the additions that these teams are making to their 40-man roster, that not a lot of teams are going to have open spots available on the 40 to pick up a reliever that has either been in the minor leagues or hurt for the better part of a calendar year, which Foley certainly falls under that category. And Gunther is not too far off behind him in that assessment as well. So you can remove him from the 40. They clear waivers. You bring them back on minor league deals. And maybe they will choose not to. Like maybe Foley is like, you know what? I know I'm a major leaguer. I'm going to go find work elsewhere. Then so be it. But I think that the hope is that they can bring them back, have them recover from injury, and then even potentially sign them to a deal similar to like what Manuel Margot got last year, where it's like, okay, you're getting a minor league deal, but we're also going to make sure that it's a kind of a 2-way contract for an NBA comparison there, where like if you make the major league roster, then your salary is much more than just a league minimum contract. I think that that's very much on the table with at least one, if not both of these guys. And the hope is that that is the situation. Okay. The only other thing I really want to talk about is the other qualifying offers that were accepted around baseball. 4 qualifying offers accepted. That is a lot. Brandon Woodruff accepts his. That one kind of surprised me a little bit. Obviously, Gleyber, we talked, for half a show about that. Shota Imanaga, somewhat surprising. He's just had such there was the player option and then the club option and then like it was a mutual thing and then like whatever, like just got a ton of stuff. So he accepts the qualifying offer. Ultimately, did not have enough of a market, it seems, to decline $22 million AAV. But the big surprise here on everybody in the baseball world's radar is Trent Grisham. I have no clue. Seriously, still to this present moment. Maybe we'll learn something later Tuesday night after I already record this so I look dumb, or later in the week. But like I am genuinely shocked. He had such a good year offensively. And has had really good seasons defensively, was going to be one of the best outfielders on the market in terms of just like production in 2025 and, who was going to be available. It really does surprise me that he accepted it. He's not that old. I think he was in the market for a multi-year deal, but Maybe not. Maybe the agents are certainly more in the loop than I am. So from my apartment in Metro Detroit. So maybe Trent Grisham's market just wasn't as fruitful as we thought. But it is just shocking to see 14. The qualifying offer was introduced in 2012. 14 total players since 2012. That's 13 or 14 off seasons have accepted the QO. 4 accepted it on Tuesday alone. That's wild. That the number goes from 14 to 18 in one day. Thanks for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in. And we will, of course, be back tomorrow as our attention turns to arbitration and the non-tender deadline on Friday. Peace and love. Going to therapy's dope. I'll catch y'all then, baby. Go Tigers.